I have a problem that I think is common to mankind. I forget at least half of what my wife tells me. I know you're like, did I click the right nugget? Yes, you did. Hang on, let me get to it. I'm talking to her last night about something I don't even remember, and she's like, the dance recital next week, and I go, whoa, dance recital? What dance recital? She goes, your daughter's dance recital, the one that you're announcing? Do you remember? I said, well, okay. I remember something about dance. Okay, so that's next week. I'm announcing it? And she goes, yes. I told you all this. Don't you remember? And I said, okay, hang on. Time out. You tell me a lot of stuff. I wish I had a filter that I could just get the key elements of what you're trying to tell me, like the important stuff, and then I would remember it. Obviously, such a filter does not exist in the human world, but that's what this nugget is about, is it does exist in the Cisco realm. The whole focus of this nugget is to really focus in on how you can filter the output of your commands to get exactly what you're looking for, and then we'll do some basic connectivity testing with ping and telnet. I'm going to keep it in the live interface for probably the whole nugget. Let's start off with the show IP route command. Obviously routers, right? Routing table, huge part of what you're looking at. In the real world, this routing table starts small and just grows and soon becomes unwieldy to just do a show IP route and see the whole thing. I still remember my CCIE exam when I took that. Within a few hours of having that thing running, I mean, your routing table is 14 pages long with routes looping every which way. So Cisco knows that. Same thing on the T-shoot exam. They're going to expect you to be able to manage an unwieldy, large routing table. So the first thing you want to do is say, okay, how do I know what a router is going to do when it's trying to get to an IP address? So let's just say you're trying to ping 10.3.5.1, right? And you're like, I'm not getting there. Does it have a route in the table? Where's it going? So you can do a show IP route 10.3.5.1. It's going to come up and say, hey, you've got this route entry for this guy right here. It was learned via OSPF. The last update was this, and actually, to get to that IP address, you're going to be going to that next hop. That's the guy that you learned it from. So you can go there and you can, okay, that's good. Whereas it will also, if I do a show IP route, let's just say 50.1.1.1, it's going to say, oh, hey, I don't know. If you go to that IP address, it's not going to be on the table. Now, keep in mind, when you do this, it's going to exclude the default route. Matter of fact, do I have a default route? Let's look. Nope. Let's add one. Just so I can prove it, I can do a show IP interface brief. Okay, let's go to IP route 0.0.0.0.0.0, and we'll go 9.0.0.1, right? So now I've got a default route. And when I do the show IP route, obviously the 50.0.0.1 would match this guy, right? Because it's default. But when I do a show IP route 50.0.0.1, it's still going to exclude the default because it's saying, hey, I'm looking for a specific route. Obviously, you would just ping this command. You know it would go after the default route. So this command is just going to find the specific routes that you have in the table. Now, you can see this thing's pretty unruly as well. In terms of, a bunch of different networks on the same class. So let's just say I want to filter this thing down. I just want to see 10.223 subnets, right? When you type in show IP route 10.223.0.0, you might say, oh, well, this will do it. But what it's going to do is say, okay, just like this guy, you must be trying to find that subnet, right? Like, where would I go to get to 10.223.0.0? So it shows me a specific route. I'm like, no, that's not what I want. I can actually go in here and type in show, this IP address, and then type in longer prefixes. Now, if you don't include a network mask, If I just type in longer prefixes, it's going to go back to the classful version. Type A, right, is a 10 network. So it's going to say, okay, I'm going to show every subnet of a 10.0.0 subnet, even though I was more specific with that show IP route. So if I really want to just see 10.223 routes, what do? Probably got it, right? Squeeze that subnet mask in there. Bam! You've got just the 10.223 subnets that you're looking at. Really handy to be able to filter it down and see exactly the kind of subnets that you're looking for. So it'll take of course, the root subnet mask, and then anything that's longer, the /30s, the /24s, all these different subnets that you have. There's more I can show you on show IP route, but let me move over to kind of, I would call this like ninja commands. Like when I see Cisco techs really start using these, I'm like, all right, dude, you're a ninja. You do this all the time. So show process CPU, perfect command to demonstrate this. This shows you all, it's like task manager kind of for your Cisco router. Shows you all the processes that are running and consuming processor cycles on here, right? Now, obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on your router, so it's kind of like, so much stuff that I want to see. Well, one of the major processes that people look at is the IP input process, because essentially, remember, a router is software based. It's processing all the routers in software. So the more traffic you have going through it, the higher the cycles on your IP input process. So I can do a show process CPU and then do the pipe. Many of you I know have seen this command, and we'll do include. Now the cool thing about this is this is like grep in the Linux world. If you're familiar with the grep command, kind of just filters exactly what you want to type in. So I'll say include IP input. Okay, and right there, boom, it comes across and says, okay, here's the line that has IP input. Obviously this router's not doing anything right now. Because all the processor, 5 seconds, 1 minute, and 5 minute, are all sitting there idle. But as I was able to filter that out. Now here's another thing that's good to know. This is case sensitive. So if you're lazy and you're like IP input, it's not going to show up because it needs the case sensitivity. So even one capital letter will throw this off. Happens to me all the time when I'm doing a show run and trying to match, a certain line in the show run command that I'm looking for, and I'm like, oh, it's not there, but it is there. I just got the case wrong, right? So making this command useful, obviously there's a lot here. I can do include CPU, right? And I can just say I just want to see the CPU utilization for the overall device over 5 seconds, 1 minute, etc., etc., etc. Or maybe I'm like, man, this thing's high. I wonder what's consuming it. Obviously, show process CPU, I've got to browse through all this, but what if I just went up and said show process CPU instead of include, I'll use exclude the lines that match 0.00%, right? I don't want to see things that are sitting there idle doing nothing. I want to see what's using processor cycles on my device. Woo! Come on, somebody right there is like, that's awesome. Because you're able to quickly see exactly the processes that are consuming the cycles and how many they're consuming on there. Now you might miss some with that command, right? Because it's essentially excluding everything with 00 anywhere in the output. Maybe I'm gonna say I want to exclude 00, but I'll do space. Spacing counts, right? It looks like there's 2 spaces between these. So I can say, show me, if I can type this right, show me everything not consuming anything all the time. Notice the list gets longer because some of them previously had a 00, like it didn't do anything over the last 5 seconds, but it did something. There was something, like it sent a hello message for OSPF somewhere in there. And so you can see that you can filter it out that way, right? So now, I know right about now you're like, that's kind of rough, right? I don't want to have to type that every single time unless I'm trying to impress a friend. Well, that's where you can go in and use the alias command. So I'll do alias. Now, by the way, this is such a cool command. Alias allows you to abbreviate any command that you want. And if you ever were curious, you know how when you're first learning Cisco, you get like interface mode, global config mode, line mode, router mode. You're like, wow, there's so many modes on the router. If you really want to see all the modes that are on a Cisco device, type in alias question mark. This is literally a list of every single mode that exists on a Cisco device. It'll make you feel like if you're like, man, I know so much about Cisco, I'm such a stud. You'll look at this and you'll probably recognize like 5% of the modes that exist. You're like, what is a crypto TTI petitioner? What on earth is that thing? I don't even know. So the point is that all these different modes. So the mode that I'm interested in is alias exec. The exec mode is essentially privilege mode. And then I can type in what do I want this alias to be. So I can say, let's just say process, right? And then I can paste in the command that I lost it. The command that I want. Let me scroll back up. Right about there. That guy. Nice long one. Put it in there. Now I can just type in process at any time and get that same output. So you can, and I have seen people create kind of a little dictionary card of abbreviations that they use. I've seen people kind of go off the deep end with this thing where they've got like 15 pages of aliases and they only remember like 5 of them. So obviously use this with some restraint. What else? Okay, so this show filtering. I'll do a show interface. This command is obviously one of the most overwhelming when you're first learning Cisco. It's like, okay, I type in show interfaces, I get all this stuff. Do I care about it? Is this stuff that I need? All that kind of stuff. Oh, look at that. I didn't even realize I had a half duplex interface on there. But the point is, this command can be overwhelming because it gives you everything about every interface. So what I can do is I could do something like show interfaces, and I can say include. Let's do is up, right? So I want to see what interfaces are up. I can just get a quick list right there. Or maybe I want to go further. I want to include a little bit more in there. I'll do is up pipe. Woo, didn't know we could do that. Spacing matters on this. It has to be smushed right up against the last one. So I'll say is up, and then think of this as like an and command, right? Show me things that has is up. And I'm looking at the output above. Let's just say rate. Now I can quickly see all my interfaces. Why does this have rate in it? Rate queuing straight. Oh, is up. I'm sure it's in there. Oh, look at that rate. Oh, that's actually a great segue right there. This does match. This is regular expressions, by the way. If you've heard of that before, it is PHP land, BGP land. You use regular expressions all the time to filter things. So when you type in rates, you're literally going to get exactly what you see there. So we've got rate, and then you can see the actual rates for each one of them. You can do things like I want to see is up, or maybe we take is up out of there, and we do show me line protocol, because I want to see the ones that are down as well. Protocol. And then we'll do a pipe, and let's do errors. I want to see the errors on this interface. So I can see right there, okay, here's all the interfaces, is up, is up, is up, so they're all up. So I see the same output, but then I can see any errors that have occurred, input or output, in a real quick sense. Do you see how this can be cool? I mean, where it can really filter down exactly what you're looking at. So again, imagine you're a consultant coming in to troubleshoot a network. What's the first thing that you're going to do? You're going to start checking these interfaces. You don't want to comb through a whole bunch of info. This is what I'm talking about. You know, if you've got that wife filter on, I can't use that. I will scratch that from the record. You know what I'm saying, right? You want to filter the important information that you want to see. this is the way to do it. Now I want to come back to this command before we move on. Show interfaces where we did the is up and then we did rate. Maybe you're one of those people that looks at this as like, okay, I see that, but I don't want rate showing up here. I know it's in the word, I know why it's showing up, but I don't want that. Now I know some of you are like, get over it, dude, but there's a very specific reason I'm going to show you this. You can actually surround that thing with parentheses. You can do parentheses space rate space parentheses. Now what that does is essentially count that space, because oftentimes Cisco will ignore the space because they're thinking, oh, you've got a space at the end of the line or something. But essentially frame that thing to where it needs the space on each side of it before it's going to show up, and you can see the queuing strategy disappeared. Now, why am I showing you that? Well, I just ran into a situation, just popped in my head a moment ago, where I was working on this router. Now, this is actually a customer router. I've kind of moved it off the screen so you can't see who it is, but essentially this is a UC520 device running IP telephony. It's supporting a bunch of Call Manager Express IP phones. And this customer said, I want to know how many active phones I have. Well, you can do a show ePhone, and that'll show you all the different phones, what buttons they're assigned, all those kind of things, right? MAC addresses. Well, he's like, I don't need all that info. I just need to know how many active phones. So I'm going, okay, how do I tell? Oh, well, look, this one says registered. That essentially means it's active. The ones that are not active will be unregistered, right? So I would do a show ePhone and include registered, right? And it's like, okay, awesome, but now you see why I'm showing you this, right? It didn't work because registered is obviously in the output of unregistered, right? So it doesn't help us much in this situation. So that's I just showed you that because I figured that out last week, and I was like, that's so awesome. So you can put the parentheses around it, obviously including the space, and now you've got just the registered coming in. That's why, I mean, it seems insignificant down here, and it kind of is, but that's why I showed you that. Let's talk about redirection. There's a lot of times you'll be working with Cisco TAC or something like that, and you'll be doing show commands, and it just overwhelms the screen. Number one command Cisco TAC will have you type in is show tech support. You ever see this command? It actually just dumps everything. It's like a combination of many show commands combined in one, and you can see it divides it by using little dashes like show interfaces. You can see right there with the dashes. It just keeps going, spitting out output. Now, obviously, you don't want to have to come back at the end of this and highlight all this, copy it to Notepad. A lot of times it'll even go past the scroll buffer of your router. So you might want to send this output to an outside server. That's where these redirect commands can come in. Good grief, 5 minutes later we make it through that output. You can do a show tech support and then do the pipe, and we've seen the include, exclude, those kind of things, but you also have redirect and T. These are two good ones. Redirect will actually allow you to say, I want to redirect this to TFTP : // and then, you know, type in your IP address of your TFTP server. So if you have a TFTP server set up, put that in there, hit the enter key. Well, actually we'll do tech.text or something like that. Hit the enter key, and it actually goes much faster because it doesn't have to put it out, in my case, to a console port and flood it to the screen. It just sends it along its way. T is the same thing as redirect. It's just you're going to see the output as it's going. Redirect, if you just do that, you'll just see a little exclamation point as it copies it over, just like you're upgrading your iOS or something. If you use the T command, then it's going to come up and actually show you what it's doing as it's piping it out to the TFTP server. Alright, last thing I want to show you in this nugget is using ping and telnet to troubleshoot. Now, hang on before you stop. I know some of you are like, oh, I know that. This is not just using ping like you and I know how to use ping. Let me do a quick show CDP neighbors. We all know that we can ping by doing ping 1021 1.1 see success message, right? Okay, one of the things that you'll often find yourself doing is testing routes where you're going, okay, does my system know about, for instance, the 192.168? So you can actually use the ping command in conjunction with source. And I can say the source, you can do either interface or IP address. I usually do the IP address of the interface. So I'll say the source is 192.168.0.1 and hit enter. And what that tells me is it says, okay, this router, the guy that I'm trying to ping, by the way, this is a GNS3 topology right here. So I'm pinging from router 2 to router 1. I know that router 1 has to know about that 192.168 subnet, because otherwise it wouldn't be able to respond to it, right? So it knows about 192.168, it must have learned about it. You can see it also knows about the 9 network, which is the other network on mine. So pinging from a specific source address is a lot of times very handy to be able to say, okay, yes, obviously you can get to my router based on its directly connected interface, because that's what ping is going to prefer. But I want to see if you can get to this or that address and use different interfaces on your device. Other thing that ping can be useful for is checking the MTU. So for instance, I can say I want to ping that IP address, but I want to use a size, and I can actually increase the size of the packet. First off, I can type in size, 1500, and it'll send more data across the line. Kind of do a little load test if you want to. That's something you're able to do. The other thing that you can use this for is for testing the MTU. And I was thinking when I think load test, I would also include a repeat, throw 100 on there or 1,000, so I can actually put some load on the line and make sure that it's able to sustain. What it's really doing when I'm doing this, by the way, is putting the alphabet multiple times inside of a packet until it reaches 1,500 bytes of data, and then sending the packet, and then it's sending 1,000 of those packets, right? So I can do that and do a miniature load test. For the MTU, you can actually add in there, I want to ping, let's say size 1500 DF bit. What that says is, do not fragment this packet. Either you will send this and the other side will accept it, or you will drop the packet. So if I increase this, let's just say to 1570, and I include the DF, don't fragment bit on there, then you can say, okay, I've exceeded the maximum size that this line can handle. So a lot of times you'll be doing this with DSL connections, VPN connections, to really see what is the maximum size, how big of a packet can I send, so I can get really efficient with setting my MTU correctly on this interface. So sometimes you might get a little random. You're like, okay, can you handle 1501? Okay, no. Now, obviously, Ethernet can only handle 1500, so it's very obvious in this question. But what if you're on an interface where you don't know what the maximum? You don't want to sit here and try, okay, 1500, 1499, work your way down one by one. It takes too long. So you can actually do this. Watch. I'll do ping, and I'll type in the IP address 10.21.1.1. Repeat. Actually, hang on. Went the wrong way. Stop the output. All right. We'll do ping, IP, type the IP address in there. Repeat count, I'm going to do 1. Right? Extended command, yes. And I'm going to say source interface, that's fine. Type of service, fine. DF bit, yes. I want to make sure, again, same thing as before, where I have that don't fragment. Validate reply, no. Data pan, that's fine. It's fine. Sweep range of sizes. Okay, this is kind of cool. So I'm going to say yes. I want to sweep the range of sizes. Let's go from 1450 all the way up to 150. Well, let's just do 1510, right? So I'm going to hit the enter key, and it's going to go across, and you can see, okay, 1450 through 1510, and then all the way up to right there. So each one of these exclamation points essentially means success. So I can say, okay, this is 1450, 1451. Now I don't want Don't want you to be like, okay, 51, 52, 50. Do some simple math. You can see that obviously there's 61 packets between here. You've got about, what is that, 60, well, it's a range of 61. So do some subtraction and then you can find out exactly where you end up landing, which the last one would be 1500 in this case, right? So great way to test your MTU. Okay, last thing I want to show you is using Telnet to test connectivity. Telnet, as you know, can access other routers. I can Telnet to 10.21.1.1 to manage the device, and that's cool as long as you have a password set. But a lot of times you might want to say, hey, is something running remotely? Like is that web server accessible? Let's say you've got a complaint that you're troubleshooting and they're like, I can't get to the web system and all that kind of stuff, and you're like, okay, well, I can ping it, I can go up there and say ping 10.21.1.1, and that's cool, but that doesn't test the web server component. Well, what you can do, let's actually shoot over to that router right now. Now I'm using a router, but obviously you would normally have a web server in mind. I'm going to type in IP HTTP server and turn on, essentially, I don't know if you know this, but every router can be its own little web server. It has really basic interface on there. But I can now go telnet to 10.21.1.1 and I can type in the individual port I want to test. So I can say port 80 and bam, it says open. And I can use a get command on there, and it says, oh, bad request, essentially. But that tells me, what that tells me from a network admin, I don't need to open a web browser to see it connect, to show a web page, things like that. I'm like, okay, as soon as I see that open, I'm good, right? I know that web server is responding. I know it's accessible. There's no access list blocking it. If it wasn't open, it would come up with something like this: connection refused by remote host. That would be a firewall being like, you can't do that. Or it would be essentially a service denied, or it would just hang there, like never connecting. Those kind of things would happen. But as soon as you see open on any port number, so you can use, test remote desktop protocol by telnetting to 3389 is RDP. There's all kinds of things that you can test by telnetting to a port number. Let me show you just one more bonus thing. This is not going to be on the exam, but it is really fun. The true poor man's load generator, right? You can actually go onto a router and turn on service TCP small servers. Now these, by the way, has long since been a tag security vulnerability, so these come disabled by default. But if you just want to generate a good load, you can turn it on the router, and then you can telnet to that device, telnet 10.21.1.1 to port 19. And what it's going to do is just start flooding your device with information. Now, obviously, I'm slowed down right now by the console connection that I have. But if I was actually telling it in, it'd be like your screen is just filling full of information. Obviously, this is... I don't know why this. I just need like a little spaceship with arrow keys that I'm shooting these things. Doesn't it give you that feel? But essentially, it's just flooding this information from the router to you, generating a good load on both processor, both the link that it's going over. So anyway, I get kicks out of things like that. That's another way that you can use that telnet to port command to do some testing for you. All that being said, you now have some excellent filtering commands at your disposal, as well as connectivity and load generation tests. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.